All right.
Welcome everyone to our group meeting for container security. And we've got an exciting announcement. Tiago, I think you should make it because you put in this picture, you know.
It was almost took me longer to figure out how to insert an animated GIF in a document than it took the team to do the feature. It was all my morning. Yes, scan execution policies, they're live. Yay. The feature flag has been turned off. And we're just excited to have people using it now. And we'll keep an eye out. We didn't let our support counterpart know. I suppose we should, right?
Yeah, probably. So, and it's the top item, as Alexander pointed out, in the release post this week or this month. So that's really exciting as well.
And Tiago, I think the hope is that our support counterparts monitor the channels, and we've been pretty vocal about this in the container security channel. So hopefully it's not news. I agree that we should be explicit, but
we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
Is there like something in the handbook about how we're supposed to inform support about these new features?
No, just ping them on Slack. There's nothing too prescriptive there.
Point solution.
And I just noticed that Gerardo is not actually in the page, so anyone trying to find out who he is wouldn't do it. I'll update that as well.
Awesome, thanks, Tiago.
Yeah, no worries.
Looks like Alexander and Lindsay, you two, you're thinking of
so
feature flag. Do you want to talk to that one?
Just on the related topic, how long we want to leave this feature flag in until we have the confidence to remove it. We've typically, that's been dependent on the size of the feature and really on a case-by-case basis, but we wanted to bring it here and thought that 14.4 was our suggestion. But are there any objections or counter suggestions?
So there is an issue that Alexander made to remove the old pages.
Yeah.
We would want to do that after we remove the feature flag, right?
I think it's all grouped into the same issue. I'm going to find it right now. But it was a bigger size issue than we usually see for these feature flag removals because it did have some of that cleanup work. I think I have found it.
Yeah,
I'll put it
I'm not
in
sure
the
if it
agenda
matters or
here.
not, but I was just thinking, once we remove the feature flag, we're past the point of no return and we can't reverse,
Exactly.
right?
Does anybody know? Does anybody know if we remove the if we switch the flag on by default or if we change it on the bot just for .com?
Can you say
find
that?
out.
Can you ask your question one more time, Tiago?
So the feature flag can be turned on the bot, or it can be switched on by default via code. I don't know which one we did.
Both. So I think we initially turned it on via the chatbot, and then after that, we changed the code to make it on by default so that we could announce it as part of 14.3 and roll it out to self-hosted.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any objections to removing it. I only see us going forward, not backwards here.
We've had ample time. You know, I think given that we're now live for self-hosted, we've been live for .com for over a week. So I will convey this response to Alexander. We'll move forward. I'll actually leave a comment in the issue itself.
Yeah, just wondering, do we have like any metrics for how many people have used a new page? How many visits have been?
I think we do get snowplow metrics for page visits. Metrics is an area that we have intentionally underinvested in our group. So we mostly only have the data that we get for free, which is just a raw page count for URL visits.
And that's just for .com users. That doesn't include any self-hosted users unless we instrument it, which I
Correct.
don't think we have.
But you can see the results of turning that on. You know, there definitely has been some interest there. If you look at our page in Periscope or SciSense, I think it's called now. I will try to drop a link to that either in the notes or in our channel.
By the way, I've made a horrible mistake. Joseph is the counterpart for container security. I was thinking of threatening sites when I said Gerardo. My bad. This is why I need to update the handbook. Hi, Alexander. Ah, okay.
Having technical difficulties, it's fine.
It's happening to a few of us this morning.
We already read your agenda items for you. Sorry.
Awesome, thank you.
I did the best, Alexander, I could, which is nowhere near.
Well, I shaved my head to be more like yours, so I'm glad
That's
you were
good.
able to do it.
It's not all about the looks, you know. You bring that happiness and joy of life that I don't think I can copy.
I'm sure you did fine.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move on to my item. I wanted to talk about, there was a rather lengthy discussion on some documentation that I wrote for the cluster image scanning analyzer. I will put it up in just a second. I'm trying to figure out the screen share. First time with 2 monitors, and I'm playing it by ear. Okay, so for the cluster image scanning, the cluster image scanning analyzer, cluster image scanning runs in 2 places. It can either run in CI/CD or it can run in the GitLab agent. And for the GitLab agent, to get the configuration, right now, the only way to do that is to use a configuration repository, which is awfully similar to the security orchestration policies. But this is the configuration that we have. And in order to configure the agent, the user has to commit this into the configuration file in their agent repository. And it's basically mirroring what we have for the scan execution policy. One thing is today, the scan execution policy can work with the CI/CD version of cluster image scanning, but it will not work with the GitLab agent version of cluster image scanning because it runs outside CI/CD pipeline, and we don't have a way to remotely trigger those scans right now.
But Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the CI/CD runner only pull the available reports? Does it also trigger a new scan? I thought it only collected the available ones and Starboard did its thing regularly.
Yes, that's correct. The Starboard operator automatically scans resources when they change. So if you create a new deployment, or basically if you create a new container, the Starboard operator will automatically scan it and stash the reports inside the cluster. And the only thing the analyzer does is pull down those reports and parse them.
Which is what Agent K is doing as well, right? only on its own schedule rather than when the pipeline runs.
Right. It basically checks every 5 minutes for new reports, and it creates those vulnerabilities using the API.
And so that brings up another question. I don't want to derail this too much, but in the policy, you can set a schedule. So that 5 minutes, is that just a number that we picked, or can that be changed based on the schedule that's created in the security policy?
Yeah, that's a number that I picked it arbitrarily. We could make it a configuration option. So that's totally feasible as well. Let me write that down. Could someone take notes for me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. So back to the discussion thread. Sam's concern is basically we have this separate configuration that does the same thing as the scan execution policy, and we don't want to have the users have to maintain 2 separate configurations, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit redundant for them to define all of the namespaces and other objects that are to be scanned when they're already doing that in their security policy.
Right. And so so one concern that I have is it feels kind of like we're conflating policies with configuration, and I'm not sure if we should be using policies as configuration. I'm having difficulty like expressing what I mean, but I think people shouldn't be configuring stuff via the policies. The policy should be used to enforce configuration.
Usually in terms of security, what happens, there's a policy that mandates something, creates a requirement, and there's a procedure to execute it, which will then create that configuration of that. I think you're right in that we conflate both a little bit, even if you look at the existing scan execution policies, you could think of them as configurations because you're still setting schedules and you're setting. So I don't think we're deviating too much from the pattern there. What I wanted to get out of that thread, and I'm happy that you brought it here, thank you, is do we refactor the MR to take the results of this discussion, or are we okay to continue DMR and then we'll iterate? Because we're releasing this in alpha, so changing the schema is not a huge deal breaker. Ideally, we wouldn't, but that's what I'm putting out there. It's mostly a question for Sam, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to refactor the existing MR, we could. If we want to make a new MR to change it, I'm fine with that as well. That's more of like a order of operations question, and I'm not too particular there. So say whatever you think best. If it's better to just merge in what you have now and then change it later, or
Yeah.
either way, I'm fine with either.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
What you're saying though about the configuration versus policy, and it certainly does feel like we're conflating the two on the back end, you know, especially to you because you're an engineer, you've worked on this, you understand all the inner workings of the whole process, start to finish. But you know, if you were to take a step back and think of it from the perspective of someone whose job it is to make sure that this cluster gets scanned, I don't know that they see so much of a difference. They just want to set it up and have it work. And, you know, whether that's done as configuration for the agent or if that's done as policy, you know, I don't think they're as concerned about that. They just want to set it up and have it work. And if something happens, you know, as Thiago pointed out, there are some cases where we may not be able to actually enforce this policy, right? Because it technically is configuration. And so if the network goes down or namespaces change, or, you know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And if that happens, you know, now your policy that you wrote is no longer being enforced. And so I think the follow on to that is I opened an epic to capture, you know, something that can be done in a future improvement. But, you know, I think the solution to that is just to display an error state and make it really apparent to users. This policy that you created, it's enabled, but it's not working. And here's why. And actually, as Thiago pointed out, that state could be true of most or maybe even all of our policies in one way or another. You know, just a regular Dask scan could fail to run because the URL that was supplied doesn't match up with what's actually in the application, or, you know, any of them could have that same sort of a problem for one reason or another. I think we just need to get better at displaying errors.
Right. Okay. And yeah, about the configuration, Mikhail from Configure Group is kind of pushing back a little bit on the configuration that I have. So I may need to change it anyway, but it's something that I do need to think about a little bit.
Yeah, for completeness and for people who prefer to watch this rather than read the huge thread, what Sam suggested was to have the front end somehow read the objects in the cluster and display that to the user when they creating the policy. It'd say, hey, these are the namespaces, just tick some boxes and we'll scan them for you. So I don't know if you thought about that, Brian, but I know you can't make synchronous requests from the front end through the back end to through the agent, because you got to wait for the agent to talk to GitLab, not vice versa. But yeah, if we were down that track, we'd probably would be another synchronization item for us to keep on the back end.
Yeah, and we won't get to that for a while. I think the epic to add in that rules mode is pretty far down our list of priorities. So it's going to be a little while before we get to that anyway. For now, the user is just going to need to figure out what that namespace list is, or I suppose the easy way is just to scan all of the namespaces, but they may or may not want to do that.
Brian, is this clear as mud? Do you know exactly what you're going to do?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit there. I have not looked at the epic yet, so I will take a look at that after. And if I have any follow-up questions, then I will ask those async.
Cool.
So just organizationally to capture this, I went ahead and I created a new sub epic inside of the big cluster image scanning epic, basically adding the requirement to not to make it so that the user does not need to set things up in that config.yaml file. If that organizational structure is problematic, please feel free to change it or just close out the epic. I was attempting to be helpful there, but if it's more useful to just close it out, feel free to do that. If you want to keep it, you're welcome to keep it as well.
Let me know if you want a hand with that, Brian.
Were you talking to me?
Yeah, Brian. It wrote brand It doesn't like Brazilian Australian accents. The organizing the epic, if you want a hand with it, I'm happy to help.
Okay, that sounds good.
All
I'm
right.
probably gonna end up refining that one, right?
Sorry, say that again.
I said I'm probably gonna end up refining that one, right?
Well, I think we need to break it down first. So I'm assuming there'll be front end and back end issues that get created under this epic, and then Alexander can help refine any of the front end issues that are created.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any front end for this one, is there?
Okay. I just have a label that says front end on the epic.
I don't
Oh.
know which one we're talking about, but the one to communicate policy errors to the users who need front end, right? That must be not the one we're talking about.
Yeah, I was not talking about the policy errors. I prioritized
My
that
mistake.
pretty far down our list of priorities. I was talking about getting rid of the need to add configuration to the config.yaml file to use the security policies
Then yes.
on the backend only. All right, anything else to cover today? As Tiago said, clear as mud. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out again if if you get confused again, or if we need to talk through it more with this one. I know there's a lot here and there's a lot of details to keep track of.
Yeah, I think really the main reason I'm confused is because, we can't really fulfill the full intention of the feature because of technical limitations. So we gotta try and do the next best thing. And, I was thinking, when I was doing this, I was kind of thinking, well, the policies can't work with this. So we're not gonna, I didn't really realize that we're still gonna have cluster image scanning policies.
Got it. Okay, well, yeah, hey, thanks everyone for the discussion today. Are there any other items, or should we call it?
I added a quick one just to say I'm starting my family and friends day early. So if you need me, speak now or hold your peace at least until Monday.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tiago.
Have a good one, everyone. Enjoy.